Welcome. Today the topic is change. And at times change is thrust upon us. But at other times it comes through a process of decisions. And sometimes something dramatic happens. It happens in our lives and we have to change. Our life is changing around us. And other times we simply decide we need a change or we need to change. But one thing's for sure, there's always going to be change. And the Greek philosopher, let me say this right, Heraclitus once said, quote, "The only thing that is constant is change." The only thing that's constant is change. See, everything and everyone on earth will experience change. And how we adapt to it is what sets us apart. Some people do have a better job of adapting to change than others. And how we adjust to the stages of those changes is really what makes us successful. Here's a quote. "The only way to make sense out of change is to plunge into it, move with it, and join the dance." Alan Watts. Just plunge in. Sometimes that's the only way to do it. Now, the 5 stages of change. And my thanks to Dr. Proshaka and his colleagues at the University of Rhode Island, who laid out in simple terms what we all have to go through at times. And he said that change is a process involving progress through a series of stages. And I think change is a growth process. Always is. And so the stages of change, which I will explain, are these 5 things. It's pre-contemplation, then contemplation, then preparation, then action, and then maintenance. And as I was going through records in the Bible, I realized everybody who went through a huge change hit these 5 steps. And so these psychologists were really right on who worked this stuff. Then I thought about my life. It's the same steps that we go through, be it weight loss, be it changing a bad habit, it doesn't matter. You'll see yourself going through these. So I'm going to explain it one time here. Number 1 is pre-contemplation. The pre-contemplation stage, or I'm not ready. And this is when we're not yet ready to change. We may be even unaware that we need to change. And this is usually the stage when friends and family point out that we need to change, but we're just not feeling it yet. And we have excuses, we have reasons, we have people to blame, and we're just not ready. So that's the first one. Quote, "When you blame others, you give up your power to change." Robert Anthony. Number 2, contemplation stage. I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready. Remember the first one, I'm not ready. I don't see it. You see it, but I don't see it. Now I'm getting ready. This is a stage where we're getting ready to make the needed change. And contemplators, they begin to visualize what it would be like to be on the other side of this problem, to be on the other side of this weight loss, to be on the other side of this issue, whatever it is. This job search, this house hunt, you fill in the blank. And we begin to see the possibilities and benefits. We know the destination. We know how to get there, and we're almost ready to act. Almost. We're getting ready. Quote, "Without change, something sleeps inside us and seldom awakens. The sleeper must awaken." Frank Herbert. Now, number 3, preparation. I'm ready. And this is a stage where we start telling people we're going to change. And this is a stage we need the most support in. And we need our cheerleaders. We need encouragement because the possibility of failure or relapse weighs heavy on a person in this preparation stage. And we begin to set goals. We make plans, and we make our final adjustments before we actually get started. We're ready. Quote, "They always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself." Andy Warhol. Now, number 4, the action stage. And this is a stage where our decisions become visible and they become noticeable to other people and to ourselves. And we adapt to our new healthy behavior. We eliminate distractions. We avoid people or situations that seem to make us revert back into that old behavior. You all know what I'm talking about. And we don't let anything tempt us to go back to our old ways. And this stage takes great amount of discipline and energy and willpower. And we change from procrastination to action. Quote, "Sometimes if you want to see a change for the better, you have to take things into your own hands." Clint Eastwood. And the last one, number 5, the maintenance stage. See, change doesn't end with action. It takes maintenance. And this is usually where pressures or emotional events cause us to relapse back into that contemplation stage. It's hard to maintain action. And we may slip up here and there, but we get back on the wagon. You know, we may fail a time or two, but each time we get back up, and each time that we get back up, it becomes easier and easier and easier until that becomes a new habit. So those are the 5 steps there to change. Quote, "One must change one's tactics every 10 years if one wishes to maintain one's superiority." Napoleon Bonaparte. So, from weight loss to changing a bad habit to finally going back to school or getting your degree, whatever it is, getting over a relationship, getting into a relationship, having children, the children leaving, it's all changes that take most humans through a loop. But these 5 steps will always be present. And you'll see them in your life as you think about this. And we learn to detect where we're at if we learn to detect where we're at according to these 5 steps, then we won't get us stuck. If I keep going back to that contemplation and I'm not acting, then I realize I'm stuck in that phase and I have to put out more energy to move to the next one. Everybody goes through these. We're going to hit some great biblical examples in a little bit. And if we hear ourselves praying for the same thing over and over and over and over, we're stuck. We're stuck. Somewhere we're stuck. If people tell you there's no way out of your situation, it can't be true. It can't be true. It may be an earthly fact, but it's not true. Here's we're going to look at some examples of change here. And we're going to move quickly through these, but they're a lot of fun. And if you look at any change from Apostle Paul, what he went through, or Jesus Christ or the apostles, any of these things, Mary, imagine being told that you have to raise up the Christ. That's quite a change. It's quite an assignment. What about, how many things in there? But we're going to start with a guy named Job. A guy named Job. And the reason I start with Job is because Job was literally the first book of the Bible that was ever written. So it has to have the basic keys in there for a human to really survive and thrive, to handle their head, to handle their life, to handle their family, handle their finances. And we're going to see the 5 steps so clearly in this. Everybody in the Bible has gone through these. You've gone through them multiple times. See, Job was a man who was hugely successful, but he was also somebody who lost his momentum, and he reverted back to the well-hidden, life-sucking lifestyle of fear. He was very good at being positive, and he was just as masterful at being negative. He allowed the fear of others' failed lifestyles, particularly his grown children, to cause him to fail. And he went through the steps of change to get his own life back. See, unwanted change is at times thrown upon us. It was thrown upon him. But he still had to go through these 5 changes. And after he lost everything, his children, his wealth, his health, and he sat down and did nothing for a week. That's pre-contemplation. What just happened to me? What just happened to me? He wasn't ready to do anything yet. So he just sat down. And then he did some self-reconnaissance. And he contemplated what happened. And he discussed what happened with his friends and with God. And this is the contemplation phase. He's getting ready. He's talking. Isn't that a big step? Just start talking. Talk to somebody. Talk to God. Write it down. Journal, blog, tweet. Do something. And then number 3, he admitted where he had gone wrong and told people what he was going to do. He envisioned the end result. He had encouragement from God and from a few friends. And he was well aware there were going to be attacks and setbacks. How would he know that? Because he's a human. I mean, every time you start something new, doesn't somebody try to bring you back down? You want to lose weight and somebody brings a cake over. Happens every time. I don't know. Well, I do know why. Yeah. I mean, whatever it is, you start exercising, and then something happens. You change your shift at work, or you change your job, and now you're out of sync for next few months. There's always something that'll stop us. He was aware of that. He knew he would have to be ready to withstand challenges from self-righteous friends. They're always there, folks. There's always somebody that's going to tell you can't or you shouldn't. It just makes me mad. And so including his wife. Didn't she tell him, why don't you just die? That's a frustrated lady. You know, to say the least. And so that's preparation. He's ready now. He's ready. He's battling through the first part of this. Now, number 4, with the help of his friends and his community, Job once again started moving in a positive direction. And instead of crumbling this time, he began to once again amass incredible wealth. It had all been taken from him. He lost everything. And he was one of the wealthiest men in the world. Lost it all. Lost all his children. So quickly. What would that do to people? I meet people who have never come back from just a loss of one child. Imagine losing 10 in one day. Adult children. And all your money the same day. Talk about a stock market crash. People end their lives because they lose their money. Whereas he said, I'm just going to start all over again. he must have reignited his relationship with his wife if he was going to get her to produce more children. He ended up having 10 more children. That's 20 kids that woman, had, popped out, whatever the right word. That's a lot. I know Josephine, her grandfather came from a family of 23 boys and 1 girl from the same mom and dad. That's a lot of babies. They beat Job on that one. And Mrs. Job, Jobita, Jobaliah, Jobanda. And he also resumed his role as a spiritual leader in his community. Action. That's that 4th one. Action. Most people don't just jump right to action. Everybody tells you that. Everybody tells you, just get doing something. Well, you're going to have to go through the steps. You got to decide. You have to go through these. Why do I want to? I don't even see the picture. I don't get it. Why do you keep telling me this stuff? I'm not seeing it. And then it's like, okay, I do see it now. I think maybe I can. I see it'd be a good idea if I started doing this or that thing. And then it's like, okay, I'm going to do this, and this to get out of this situation. And now what do? Now I act. I do something. And then 5, finally, Job was able to maintain momentum on his new and vibrant lifestyle. And it's so much so that he and the missus produced 10 more beautiful children and doubled his wealth. This all took time. And that's maintenance. That's maintenance. Not easy to do. He couldn't have been that old when he really got started on this thing. If you have adult children and you start having kids at 15, 16, he might have been in his early 40s, when they were grown, mid 40s. And then they start having to have more kids at that time. This crazy stuff. And he had to start his business all over again. So those of you who are starting your careers late in life, get in line. You're not the first, and you surely won't be the last. See, in that book, remember like I said, it was the first book ever written. So it has to have some dominant examples that humans need in order to flourish in life. It has to be in there. I just barely touched this. Job gave himself a second chance. Job gave himself a second chance. Why don't we give ourselves a second chance? He knew it was his fault. Job clearly went through those 5 stages of change. I'm going to tell you a story I just heard yesterday. And there's an Iowa girl who was so badly injured in an accident. She was goofing around. She was riding on the hood of a car, and the guy stopped, and she fell off and banged her noggin and ended up in critical care. And 4 years ago, the family started discussing funeral arrangements for her. And just last week, she graduated high school. And Taylor went from being a high school cheerleader, just a spunky little thing, to lying unconscious in the intensive care ward of Des Moines Blank Children's Hospital. And, she had feeding tubes, just this stuff keeping her alive. The machines monitored the swelling in Taylor's brain. And family and friends were coming through, they were platooning through quietly just to say their goodbyes. And they said, that hospital said she was the most serious patient here. And about a week later, conditions got even more serious, and this girl suffered a brain hemorrhage. And she had been in the hospital for 6 weeks at this point. She was 17 years old. And so the doctor said her brain had slipped down into her spinal column, and that her brain had turned to mush. And they had to do CPR and go through extreme lengths to get her breathing and living again. And the following day, the doctor said, "We're sorry, there's nothing more we can do for her. You should probably say goodbye." And the parents started making funeral arrangements at that time. And the doctors told Taylor's family they were pretty darn sure, 99% sure, she would never wake up again. And they declared her brain dead. And they took her off medications and they took her off oxygen. And the family prayed. And a family friend who was a chiropractor who had been treating Taylor's great aunt. He came in and he prayed for the girl, and he visited her hospital room, and he laid his hand on the back of her neck. A couple of hours later, the doctor came in and basically told us, "We don't know how to medically explain this to you, but she's breathing on her own." And Taylor opened her eyes and moved her fingers and toes, but the doctors still cautioned the family, don't get your hopes up. You know, that she'd probably be on a breathing and feeding tube the rest of her life. And, through what happened is this guy, everyone except for Taylor and this chiropractor, had basically given up. And he was a shred of hope. He believed. He prayed. And he must have pre-contemplated, because he knew the family thought, should I go? Should I not go? Should I go? I want to touch her. I want to see if there's anything I can do, because chiropractors think they can fix anything by adjusting a neck or something. And so he was that same kind of guy. And then he contemplated, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to go see her. This is now many weeks, this is 7 weeks or whatever after. And then he prepared himself. He said, okay, I'm going to go, and here's what I'm going to do. And then basically he acted, and then she responded, and now she had to maintain this deliverance. So sometimes it's bigger than us. It takes someone else to really help us through the most difficult of situations. A touch on the neck, the right word, whatever, a few bucks, whatever it takes. The girl graduated high school this past week. And I love how someone else went through most of the steps for her, but she still had to act, and she still has to maintain her deliverance today. Isn't that a great story? Just something. Written off by everybody. And this guy just in slim chance, I really want to touch her. I really feel like I need to touch her and pray for her. And he did. Just crazy stuff. Good stuff. You've all heard of Jonah. And he was a man who was literally given an assignment from God. Except for he didn't like it. He freaked and ran the opposite way. Wouldn't that be pre-contemplation? I'm not ready for this. I don't want this. We've all been in situations I don't want this to happen to me. I don't want to do this. I don't want to feel like this. And I'm going to read this from the Message. You can turn there if you like. We're not going to read a whole lot of verses today, but I wanted to read these from Jonah chapter 1. And it says, one day long ago, God's word came to Jonah, Amittai's son. Up on your feet and on your way to the big city of Nineveh. Preach to them. They're in a bad way, and I can't ignore it any longer. But Jonah got up and went the other direction to Tarshish, running away from God. He went down to the port of Joppa and found a ship heading for Tarshish. He paid the fare and went on board, joining those going to Tarshish, as far away from God as he could get. See, he hopped on that ship, and he was heading to what would be considered the edge of the world, the outer limits, Mars. And he asked the crew to throw him overboard during a great storm. And he was swallowed up by this huge sea creature. And while the air was being crushed out of him, as that behemoth dove deep under the Mediterranean Sea, he prayed and he reset his priorities. Contemplation. I'm just about ready. That's a weird time to be just about ready, right? How weird would that be to get sucked down like a minnow into this big old creature and nothing to breathe but water? 12. Jonah said, throw me overboard into the sea, then the storm will stop. It's all my fault. I'm the cause of the storm. Get rid of me, and you'll get rid of the storm. Now, to think that you're the cause of this big old storm, I mean, that's not a really good place for your mind to be, you know. And humans like to do that. We think that we're the cause of all the bad things that happen to us sometimes. Sometimes it's just this crazy old world that's the cause of these bad things. Sometimes it's us. Verse 17, then God assigned a huge fish to swallow Jonah. Jonah was in the fish's belly 3 days and 3 nights. Then chapter 2, verse 1, then Jonah prayed to his God from the belly of the fish. Now, logically, that had to be within the first 3 minutes. Because you can't live 3 days in a fish. Okay. And so when he was just first going down, he goes, oh, I'm getting ready. I'm getting my mind ready to go to serve God. And, you know, so he prayed to God from the belly of the fish. See, he then decided to complete his task. That's preparation. I'm ready. I'm ready. Chapter 2, verse 9. But I'm worshiping you, God, calling out in thanksgiving, and I'll do what I promised to do now. But I'm sure he couldn't wave his hands like I just did. I'll do what I promised to do. You know? Salvation belongs to God. Then Jonah died. But it wasn't game over. After 3 days of being squeezed and pre-digested in that monster, it vomited him back out onto the shore in similar to the place where he took off from. He then walks 400 miles to a city called Nineveh. Enemies. Bad people. And he told the population there the message that God told him to tell them, which would be action. Action. Chapter 3, verse 1 through 3. Next, God spoke to Jonah a second time. Get up on your feet and on your way to the big city of Nineveh. And I'm thinking, that's when he'd be feeling sorry for himself. Don't you know what just happened to me? Give me a minute to collect my thoughts. He gets vomited out, raised from the dead. And it's like, what are you doing there, buddy? Get moving. You only got 400 miles to walk through enemy territory. Preach to them. I don't like them. Preach to them. And they're in a bad way, and I can't ignore it anymore. These people are hurting. God saw that city was hurting, and they needed the words that only this one man on earth was willing to do, willing to speak. And he walked those 400 miles and did that. And this time Jonah started off straight for Nineveh, obeying God's order to the letter. And the people of Nineveh listened, and they trusted God, and they proclaimed a citywide fast and dressed in burlap to show their repentance. Everyone did it. Rich and poor, famous and obscure, leaders and followers. See, the entire city responded, about 120,000 people, to one man's words. 120,000 people rapidly changed their lifestyle, and they went through these steps. But they did it boom, 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 boom within days. And this is probably the single greatest turning to God in the history of the human race. I don't think anybody has ever accomplished that. 120,000 people because of a few words. Their lives changed. Sadly, Jonah still hated these Ninevans, and he was pissed, that God loved and cared for these unbelievers too. A lot of Christians don't think God takes care of the unbelievers. To God, he doesn't care. He loves everybody. We think we're so much more special than everybody else. We're all special. Or you are special, just like everybody else. He reverted back to his old selfish behavior and second-guessed God. See, he didn't maintain his mindset. He didn't maintain, and he wanted to die again. And thus goes the cycle of change. And the story of Jonah ends there. Another thing about Jonah, I think it's one of the earliest prophets. So this is another first. And his ministry lasted, biblically, all we know is his ministry lasted the length of this one mission. 3 days and however long it took to do his job in Nineveh. Then it's over. But he was a Christ type. Jesus Christ mentioned him, a few times. It's a big deal, this Jonah guy, what he did. So we talked about that girl. We talked about Job. We talked about Jonah. These are people who overcame horrific tragedy. Moses waited 40 years to act on what he knew God's will was for his life. 40 years. You think your husband procrastinates? During that time, he was schooled by his father-in-law, who, like Abraham, was a spiritual man, and his name/title stated that. Called him also the friend of God, just like Abraham. Isn't that crazy? This guy was something. This Jethro, he wasn't just some old sheep herder. This guy was the man. And he wasn't even part of the children of Israel. What? God worked in somebody who wasn't one of the chosen? Every time you go to the hospital or somebody does, we're always praying for the doctors and nurses. Most of them are from Pakistan, and you're still praying for God to work in them. And if you get healed, you believe God did work in them. But yet we don't think they do, that God does. It's just crazy how duplistic our mindset is. God can work in ways that we can't even imagine, and he does. Jethro was Moses' cheerleader and mentor through the entire process of saving the children of Israel. In fact, right after it was done, he went back to talk to him. Look what I did. That's who he went to. That was his go-to guy. Do you have a go-to person? 40 years prior, Moses was given the task of saving the children of Israel. Sounds easy. And they were slaves in Egypt. Look how hard it was to get slavery to end in our country. You think it was any less easy in Egypt? He was afraid for his life, so he ran away. This is pre-contemplation. I'm not ready for this. Why me? So, I guess when the going gets tough, go to become a sheep herder, Yeah. And as the next 40 years passed, he rebuilt his heart to respond to the truth. And he was told by an angel disguised as a burning bush to go back to Egypt and deliver Israel. And he decided to respond and change his simple lifestyle for one of grand drama and great potential harm to himself and to his people. He had to pull a group of people who were slaves from one of the greatest powers on earth at that time, the country of Egypt. That's contemplation. I'm getting ready. And next Moses heads back to Egypt to face some potentially deadly challenges. Now it's preparation. I'm ready. He still hadn't done anything. He's still preparing. Don't you think he was thinking, what am I going to say? How am I going to do this? How am I going to accomplish? I mean, he had to just run this stuff through his head. Probably talk to people. He reconnected with his brother, and different good stuff. Preparation. I'm ready. And now he pushes to have audience with the Pharaoh and tells him, let my people go. And the Pharaoh said, not going to do it. Not going to happen. Never hachi GI. Moses then shows Pharaoh the deadly consequence of his stubbornness. Action. Action. He did something, and then God made even more stuff happen. I mean, God, sometimes when you just get started, all of a sudden that burst of energy, be it spiritual or something deep within you, happens and allows you to handle a horrible situation. Moses then spends the final 40 years of his life getting the people to trust and respond to love, to light, to God, to truth, so they can enjoy incredible abundance. And this is maintenance. He maintained this. See, Moses went through these 5 stages of change just like all of us, just like we transition through change. And what about those 4 lepers who were sitting at that gate of that city that was surrounded by the enemy, and the enemy was starving out those people, and there was very little food? And we're going to watch how these people decide to change, and in turn, their actions saved the population of that particular city. And it's in 2 Kings chapter 7. Just listen up. Verse 3. It happened that 4 lepers were sitting just outside the city gate. This is pre-contemplation. They couldn't even go inside. They had to sit there between the enemy and the people in that city. Imagine how freakish that would seem. You have no protection. Plus, you're very sick. Very, very sick. And not so pretty to look at. Nobody wanted to be around you. Nobody would touch you. And so they're just sitting there watching what's going on. You think they probably have less food than the people inside. And so they said to one another, what are we doing here at death's door? If we enter the famine-struck city, we'll die. If we stay here, we'll die. So this is contemplation. Now they're almost ready. They're getting ready. And so let's take our chances in the camp of Aram and throw ourselves on their mercy. And if they receive us, we'll live. If they kill us, we'll die. We've got nothing to lose. Now this is preparation. Now they're ready. They're starting to wiggle in their, on the rock that they're sitting on. It's like, okay, we're going to do something now. So now that's preparation. So after the sun went down, they got up and went to the camp of Aram. So would that be action? Action. And they got to the edge of the camp. Surprise, not a man in camp. The master had made the army of Aram, master meaning God, had made the army of Aram hear the sound of horses and a mighty army on the march. And they told one another, The king of Israel hired the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Egypt to attack us. And so panicked, they ran for their lives through the darkness, abandoning their tents, horses, donkeys, the whole camp. They left it just as it was, running for dear life. And these 4 lepers entered the camp and went into a tent. And first they ate and drank. Then they grabbed silver, gold, and clothing and went off and hid it. Then they came back, entered another tent, and looted it, and again hiding the plunder. And finally they said to one another, we shouldn't be doing this. This is a day of good news, and we're making it into a private party. If we wait around until morning, we'll get caught and punished. Come on, let's go tell the news to the king's palace. So they went and called out at the city gate. Remember, they couldn't go in, telling what had happened. We went to the camp of Aram, and surprise, the place was deserted. Not a soul, not a sound. And the horses and the donkeys left tethered, and the tents abandoned, just as they were. And this is the maintenance and follow through. Now they're maintaining this mindset, and they're helping other people. Those men, each covered with a horrible disease that forced them to live away from the general population, went through these 5 stages of change. Their action saved many. Your action can save many. Your action can save yourself. But then now it's maintenance. It's maintenance. See, so at times, unwanted change is thrust upon us. We don't want it. And what are we going to do? And at other times, change comes through a process of others' observations, then introspection and decisions. And we're either forced to change or we're told we need to change. See, everyone and everything on earth will experience change. It's how we adapt to change that sets us apart. You know, change is a growth process. And it's going through those 5 steps of change. It takes incredible energy. It takes incredible discipline. And it takes resilience, because you're going to get thumped. So one last time, the 5 stages of change. 1, pre-contemplation. Unless change is forced upon us, we usually need to be told by others that our habits are a detriment to us or to society. I'm not ready to change yet. Pre-contemplation. You ever notice how sometimes you can see if that person would just do this and that, they would prosper, or they would get healed, or they would, they can't see it. They're at this stage right here. Then contemplation. I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I can even see what you're saying. I even see the beauty and the benefits of that change. I'm almost ready to act. Almost. Now, preparation. You know, I'm now ready. You know, I'm good to go. I'm into it. I'm going to tell everybody who's going to listen to me that I'm about to get started on this new lifestyle. You ever heard somebody talking about the new diet where they're going to start exercising? You tell everybody this stuff. I'm going to find a mate. I'm going to, whatever it is on the change. I'm going to get a new job, a new career, and you start talking about it. That's a preparation phase. It's a good phase. It's good. I set my goals. I surround myself with cheerleaders. I surround myself with a support group. I'm ready. I'm ready now. Now action. My decisions now take shape. My decision to change is now visible, tangible. I eliminate anything that distracts me from my goal. I avoid people and places that drag me down and pull me back. I'm moving forward, and nothing is going to stop me. That's action. And number 5 is maintenance. Getting started is hard, but maintaining momentum is harder. Things begin to happen that get me to want to slip back into my old comfort zone. That's why it's so hard to get out of those things sometimes. You see, when I slip up and revert back, and notice I said when I do, I shake it off and I just chalk it up to learning. You see, and if we keep moving forward, we're all going to fail at times on our goals. You see, but we just keep failing forward. Fail forward. I looked up is there any animals on earth that can't walk backwards? And there's one family of animals, the kangaroo. It does not have the ability to move backwards. Isn't that funny? Its body geometry just will not allow it to go backwards. It can only go forward. And so I think, what is it that can keep us going forward, that will never allow us to go backwards? Remember the Romans, the hobnailed sandals that they wore? Those sandals were only designed to move in a forward motion because they never thought of retreat. And that's how we never think retreat. We just keep moving forward. And that's maintenance. Just keep failing forward. If you make a mistake, then get back on. If you get off your diet, get back on your diet. If you're trying to quit drinking, and you start, then get back the other way. If you're trying to start drinking and you don't want to, whatever it is, quitting smoking. I mean, you fill in the blank. You understand this. We've all been through it. So you remember the sage words of Heraclitus? Was the only thing that is constant is change. So we're going to master our transformation as we maintain our change. God bless.